Want to know how I fine-tune my own system OM-5 for stunning landscape and nature photography? Stick around as I share my personal settings for both RAW and JPEG that help me capture the perfect shot every time. Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Jimmy, and today I'm going to give you a little tour how I set up my OM system OM-5. These are the settings I swear by when out photographing landscapes and nature. But I've also been playing around with some tweaks for the days when I'm just out and about. Maybe doing some travel photography, or just when I'm out on the town and want to take the photo straight out of the camera and post it on social media. So I'm mostly shooting RAW when I'm out photographing landscapes and nature. But if you're a just pure JPEG shooter, stay until the end. I have some nice tips for you there. But let's just get straight into it. I'm not going to hold you up here. Okay, so the first settings I want to show you is just the pure basic. And I want to keep my photos as consistent as possible throughout my photo shoot. So maybe I'm taking multiple shots on the same spot, but the light is changing, like in a sunrise or sunset. So what I usually do is I put my camera to a custom white balance, in this case 5400 Kelvin. That just makes it gives it the same consistency throughout all the photos. And yes, I can change this in post afterwards, but like when I upload the photos to my PC, I just want them to be consistent right away. And then we have, I usually go for, I'm adding one on red and I remove one on green. And that gives it a little bit more punch. It doesn't affect the RAW file, but it affects how the LCD displays the whole image, the whole frame. So it just gives me a little bit of a more natural look towards how the RAW file will look when I upload it to the PC. It's easy for me to imagine what the end result would be in the RAW file. Color profile, picture mode. I usually go with natural or muted when I'm shooting just pure RAW. And I usually add one in sharpness here as well, because when I focus peak, I can see the line of the focus peaking just a tad bit better. So it's just a small quick tip. Currently I'm on center weight metering, but I usually do matrix, but currently I'm trying out center weight. And next up is the cogwheel menu. We're going to go to the menu and we're going to go down to the cogwheel, and here's pretty much where all the magic happens on the OM system OM-5. So I'm using back button focusing. So I use this AEL and AFL button to focus when I'm out shooting. And the reason I have that is because if you half press the shutter button and you take a picture and then you half press again to take another picture, it refocuses. But it doesn't do that when you have back button focusing. So I only focus one, and then I can just take the photos I want to take without it refocusing all the time. So how you set it up is going menu, the cogwheel as I said, and A1. And we're going to go down to the AEL AFL. And you want to change these settings to single autofocus, manual focus, and starry autofocus, all to mode 3. And continuous autofocus to mode 4. And be sure to set the halfway autofocus to inoperative as well, because if this is on operative, it will still try to focus when you half press this button. So we keep that in inoperative. And then we have, it's a small setting, but some lenses for OM system, or Micro Four Thirds maybe, even, they have a focus clutch on the camera, on the lens, that you can pull back and forth. And you can actually disable that function so it doesn't get activated by mistake. And how you do it, just going to menu, A4, and we go to manual focus clutch, inoperative here as well. That way it doesn't matter which way the clutch is, you will still have all the focus on the actual buttons on the camera. And now we're coming to something really important, and that's the button setup, how you control the camera. And the buttons I'm talking about is these two, these three, and these as well, the dial buttons. So what you actually can do is going menu, you're going down to B and button function over here. And here you can customize all the buttons. Personally, for me, I use the drive mode as drive mode. That's this button over here. And then I have the button in front of that here is the live ND filter. And live ND only works in manual or shutter speed, but I go manual, I press that, and live ND over there activates. And then we have on the exposure compensation button over here, I have set to HDR. And HDR on this camera kind of works like bracketing, but still not the same, because you have still built-in bracketing as well. We're gonna touch on that in another video, so press the subscribe button and like button for that upcoming video. The record button over here is magnify, and I have it on magnify basically just to zoom in a little bit to see easier what I'm actually shooting. It's not like a really important button, but I have it there. And then we have the AEL AFL. That should be the default AEL AFL button. You can change this though if you actually want that button to do something else. ISO button over here is the bracket button. And bracketing is very nice in different ways, because you have focus bracket, you have now art bracket. I'm not actually sure what that is, I haven't read up on that. ISO bracket, flash bracket, white balance bracket, and then you have as well exposure bracket as well, so that's very nice. And here I can change how many frames and how many stops it jumps on that, so up to 7 frames on exposure bracketing, which is very nice. That's not what we were talking about right now though. And then we go down a little bit more, we have the dial buttons over here. I have that set to direct function. That way I have on the right dial button I have manual focus, I can activate manual focus. And on the down button I have ISO. And then we have this little button over here. I can reach that with my ring finger when I'm shooting. And that's basically focus peaking. And I mentioned this in another video, that you can actually focus peak while in other modes than manual focusing, which is fantastic. I love this function. And for the menus I'm not going into, it's basically menus I don't touch. So let's continue here with C2. Image stabilization, stabilizer, always keep it on, because if you have it on auto, the camera is gonna try to figure out like what kind of stabilization you want. But you know, like if you half press the button, you want all the axes to be as stable as possible when you're hand shooting. So I keep this on 1, so it's always active. So under D1, I'm pretty sure this is default settings, but just make sure that under control settings and PASMB, live super control panel is active. So let's move on to D3, grid settings. I just like to keep my preset 1 as green. I like just pure green. You can have this any color you want though. You also usually run with a 3x3 for the rule of thirds. But you have a little bit of different options here as well if you want to explore and try them out a little bit. And just to make sure that the apply to EVF is active as well. And then we have peaking settings. And peaking color is basically just the red line that goes around when I'm focus peaking. So I have it on red. You can choose between the other colors if you want to, but I keep it on red. I also want it to be on high intensity. I think that works the best for me. Image brightness adjustment just off, otherwise it will change depending on how bright it is. Then we have histogram settings. Here's just a little bit of special, because pure white is at 255 and pure black is on 0. So I have mine activated, so at 1 and 254. So it just gives me, it shows the clipping just a tad bit before it actually clips. That way I have just a little bit of warning that I can clip a little bit and still have all the information. And remember, the LCD display is like the physical LCD display only shows the JPEG version of the photo and not the RAW. The RAW file can actually bring back more information in post-processing than JPEG. So just keep that in mind, that even though you're clipping a little bit, probably in the RAW file you're not clipping at all. The next setting we're going to is just E1, and we're going down to noise filter and noise reduction, and just turn both off. They tend to soften the images when you're doing long exposures, which we don't want. We want to have all the control we can have in post-processing instead. So moving on, we're going down to G. The only thing here that I'm a little bit, well, changing, I guess, outside of the white balance as I mentioned earlier, keep warm color on and off. When I'm shooting just pure RAW, I usually keep warm colors off. But when I shoot with JPEG as well, RAW plus JPEG, I keep this on actually. I think it gives a more even light or even color cast, can you call it that? For the JPEG files. So direct out of camera. But for shooting just pure RAW, I have it set on off. Moving on to H1, just one down. We are going to copyright settings, and I highly recommend you putting this down because if your image is starting to float around on the internet and there is no copyright settings done to the original files, well, it's too bad if other people start using them and calling the photos theirs. So just go down to copyright settings, and artist name and copyright name, just write your whole name and you're good to go. And copyright info on, make sure that's on as well. We're almost done here in the menu as well, but we're going down to I, and we're going down to info settings, and you just want to check all these three. For custom 1, I have the histogram and highlight and shadows. And for custom 2, I have only the level gauge. And that's pretty much when pressing the info button here, it will switch between all these settings, or all these options rather. So I can have it all clean like this, or I can have everything showing as well like this. But there's a few more settings in shooting menu number 2. So we're going back there. We're going down to anti-shock and silent here. And make sure anti-shock and silent is put to 0 seconds here. And then the noise reduction to off here as well. And that's all the RAW file settings I'm using for the camera. And I promise using JPEG settings as well for straight out of camera, SOOC, straight out of camera. And I have my program done now to my custom button over here. And how you can program that button is choosing the mode you want. So I'm going with aperture mode. And then you do all the settings that you want to do. I'm going to show all the settings that I personally use for this. We do all the settings, and you go to menu, and you go to the first option, reset custom modes, and assign to custom mode, and then you just want to do the custom mode C. That way, when you're shooting in any other mode, you can go to manual, you can go to shutter, you can go to aperture mode, whatever mode you want to. As soon as you go to custom, like that, those settings that you saved to that will be used. And then when you go back to the other modes, the old settings that you were using for that mode will be comes back to that mode. So that way you have two different modes in pretty much the same mode, I guess you can say. But right, let's continue here. I'm going to go over to custom mode because I already assigned it. So here's the custom mode. And we're going to do all the settings in the super control menu, and that's pressing the OK button in the middle. So the biggest difference here is that now when I have large, superfine plus RAW, I still have the RAW file behind the photo, but I also get this JPEG file with these settings that we are going to look over now. And then you can upload them to your phone from the camera and just use them for social media right away. So I think it's pretty good actually. But okay, super control menu, auto white balance for this one actually. And then I have, as I said before, keep warm color on. And same here with the red and green white balance, +1 on red and -1 on green. That I think works really, really good. Picture mode, I go with vivid for this. Sharpness still at 1. Gradation on auto. And then we have the highlight and shadow controls. So for shadow, we go -1. And you can control that by turning this dial, that dial. And you can turn the highlights by the front dial over here. So we're going with 3 there. And to get to the mid-tones, you press the info button once and you get the mid-tones. And you just want to go with -4 here. And that's because you want to pull down the overexposure that naturally happens when it's bright outside. Go with center metering always when shooting in JPEG. And that's pretty much it, actually. So these are my settings pretty much for JPEG. It's not harder than that. We're actually done. So there you have it. My go-to settings for the OM system OM-5. Tailored to how I shoot, but feel free to tweak them to fit your style as much as you want to. But I think this is a pretty decent like a base to stand on. If you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up and press the subscribe button for more tips. Until next time, have a good day or evening whenever you're watching this. Out!